Welcome back to Fair's Fair and part 2 of my Castlevania Fair review. This part will be covering Season 2, which I believe now should have just been Season 1 Part 2 even more than I did before. Once again, episode by episode, and based on people's reaction telling me that Season 2 was very good, I have to say there are some parts of this that I very much did enjoy. There were some things done in this season that absolutely show some exemplary skills when it comes to writing very specific aspects of a story. That being said, I don't know if I would list it higher than Season 1, if only because Season 1 had so little actually happen in it that it was hard for me to find any kind of flaws with it. This one being considerably longer, yet at the same time somehow too short, very much did have time to build some flaws into its story. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with Episode 1. Backstory. Not any of her relationship with Dracula, we're still leaving that in Yada Yadaville, but we are covering what she did just before she was Town of Salem. And some of you are way too tryhard in Coven All Any and you know who you are. Anyway, the Season 2 wind-up shows us something else of importance. There are more vampires, a lot of them. Some of them are unique, likely the Vampire Lord type of individuals. I can't wait to learn about their individual powers, their individual strengths, and for them to be major obstacles with their own names and particular struggles against the heroes. And, well, frankly, that was kind of it for Episode 1. It wasn't a hugely eventful episode other than setting up more of what Dracula's doing and more of what's going on in his area. So in Episode 2, I'd like to say, I do really like the rivalry between Alucard and Belmont. They have a weird chemistry that suits them really well.
I will find us a covered wagon and horses if you two can manage not to kill each other while I'm gone.
Oh, please. We're not children.
He shouldn't die.
Yes, fuck you. Do you really believe we could find the tools to kill my father at your old home?
I'll be honest with you. I don't have a better idea. I just know that right here, right now, we are under-equipped for the job.
I'm trusting you, Belmont. Don't make me regret it.
Everybody regrets it in the end, Alucard.
There's also some creative differences in the Dracula house on how efficient the war should be going. Then a new girl, Camilla, shows up and questions Dracula's decisions on not turning his bride right to his face in front of his generals. They move to a private room and talk, and she all but threatens to make things worse between him and his generals unless he allows her on the council, and he actually does. As of right now, we don't know her motivations, but we do know his. He would like the war to happen, and he knows a bunch of bickering people do not make for a good war. So however much he seems to have very clear and justified misgivings about her motivations, he really has no choice but to let her in for right now because he can't be bothered to make them obey him. And once again, the anti-monster fighting is intense with flow, and this time the mage gets some good finishers. We also learn the motivations of the character Isaac, one of the Forge Masters. He was whipped and tortured for wanting to learn so he could help and for feeling the emotion of love. Fair enough. Not a long story, but he's not the focus right now. What does matter is balance.
Useless fucking thing. Now do your filthy human magic with it.
The Forge Master magic that they are using, and at least some forms of magic, can apparently only be done by humans. Full vampires not only can't be in the sun really, but there also seem to be some forms of magic that they can't do, as the vampires have never been able to produce a Forge Master. This is good because vampires overall are incredibly powerful. One of the major issues with the Twilight Saga is that there's literally no reason why evil vampires don't run the world. They move too fast for anyone to be able to stop them, bullets can't kill them, them. There's no reason why Twilight vampires haven't already conquered the world, other than some of them are altruistic, and you will not convince me that the bad vampires are having trouble recruiting megalomaniacs. But that's off topic, we're tangenting again. On the terms of balance, episode 2 establishes a valuable thing to know. Vampires themselves don't know all the rules of vampires or what is myth or real.
The Greeks used to bury us on small islands because the graves would be surrounded by running water.
I think I would probably feel like running water would kill me.
Really? Do you feel like poison would kill you? Of course you don't. It's a thing you learn. It's not like we're given a manual for being a vampire.
Given their rather extreme reaction to holy water and similar things, I can understand how it's a tentative line for them to be willing to cross. What qualifies as running water? They even have a brief discussion about whether or not the ocean or a bathtub counts as running water. However much this is an interesting thing to note about vampires, this doesn't actually come up again, so, you know, it's just interesting for us to know. I'm sure it will come up later. It does have the potential to come up in season 3 and 4, but it isn't really important to this season. Because in the same scene, they also somehow know that there was a Belmont who repelled their attack. Or at the very least, they suspect that there was one there, but we never actually saw them learn that and have no real clue as to how they got that info. Do they have spies nearby? No one's noticed them? But the writer needed them to focus on the Belmont estate, so I guess they know now. Considering how many decisions are hinged on this, it's a little strange that they never clarified how this info was obtained. Especially considering they have a really convenient out that they reference later and then never actually use for the one way that any reasonable person would use it, but we'll get to that later. Because Moron.advisor asks why they should check out the home that has a huge underground stockpile of weapons designed specifically to kill them when there's a chance that someone who can open it is nearby, and she used that to further herself in the council. A good tactic on her part, by the way. She's rather good at manipulating a crowd. But that doesn't change how mind-numbingly stupid the immortal general that Dracula chose for his council is.
It may have access to the trove of weapons and magical materials talked of across generations but never found, which they used to hunt us through fucking centuries. This is your war council, my lord?
And no, pointing it out doesn't make it less dumb that this man does not know that a vampire hunter heading for a vault of vampire hunting equipment might slightly concern him, a vampire. This is the same guy that susses out later that Dracula intends to kill all the humans and have everyone starve to death with him. He can figure that out on his own, but for some reason he was struggling to comprehend and connect the pieces as to how vampire hunting weapons should be of some concern to a vampire.
If there is a Belmont left alive, then should we not observe the ancestral Belmont home?
Why? He's gonna kill all the humans and leave us without any livestock. We're all gonna starve to death. I'll tell you another thing. I still wouldn't want to try him in a straight fight, but I have a strong suspicion he hasn't fed in a while.
Just how dumb are you?
It varies.
Ah, the night creatures are forged out of the dead. Cool. Apparently they were naturally reproducing or made from wild magic, but to keep up with demand, they needed the human forge master, Hector. So I guess the demons are actually built, not summoned. That's an important note because that means that their army is limited by the amount of corpses they bring in. And in this episode, they do clarify some of Carmilla's motivation. She doesn't want to work for a crazy old dude because the last master she had was a crazy old dude who went insane with age. Stands to reason and I'll buy it. Not particularly deep, but then again, it doesn't have to be. Not wanting to serve crazy people is generally considered sanity. She asks Forge Master Hector to send some soldiers to the Belmont home because...
Why are you so fascinated by that?
If anyone in all the world has tools or magic who can harm our Lord Dracula, it is in the Belmont Trove. We need to ensure it does not fall into the wrong hands. Simple.
All right. That is logical. I agree to that. But Dracula must approve the dispensation of tropes.
And and when he says Dracula will still need to approve it, she changed the subject immediately. After talking about his past, she asks him to help her convince Dracula to attack a place that she wants. And him being, well, kind of gullible and a rather innocent soul as far as Dracula's compatriots go, actually agreed with her. But we do get Hector's backstory. In his backstory, he agreed to help Dracula on the condition of no suffering and that the culling would result in humans being mercifully cared for as livestock for vampires. This is a bit at odds with his co-tactician, as Isaac seems to want people to suffer. This will definitely be important because it's going to be a major influence on some of the characters' decisions and even some of the interplay that shows how the characters understand each other. I know I seem like I'm talking on characters a lot, and I am. In fact, I couldn't even show you all of the chemistry of our heroes, but honestly, it's pretty good.
I'm disturbed to find that I had more of a childhood than you did.
And your dad's fucking Dracula. What?
Well. Naughty Belmont's hunting all the terrible things of the forest, but sitting on a magic door opened by a cult language.
I didn't know it was a fucking magic door. Doesn't make us black magicians.
But you know that the word Telok means of death, right?
Shut up.
It's the magical door of death, Belmont.
Are you coming or what?
Belmont isn't even a Wallachian name. That just dawned on me.
No. The family's originally from the Kingdom of France, but we moved out of there a few hundred years ago.
Moved or chased?
Moved? Thank you very much.
With people behind you waving pitchforks and torches?
No. No. We're professionals. We move where the work is.
It's worth the watch just for that. They're like brothers, they're rivals, laughing casually yet quick to get bothered by one another. The characters, be they human or not, are really well humanized and relatable on that level. I mean, Hector keeps a reanimated puppy. That is exactly the kind of thing someone with the ability to reanimate things would do. The episode ends with us learning that Dracula doesn't actually seem to have a real plan for after the humans are gone.
It's very simple, Dracula. If you kill all the humans, where does the continuing supply of human blood come from?
I allow you to go on feeding raids when we change location. I have blood stored in cold canisters. There are animals in the lower levels. You won't go hungry, Godbrand.
Not right now. No, but later.
You will be taken care of, Godbrand.
Yes, of course, right. Except, what if we're not?
I will not be questioned by you. I have told you how it will be. The humans will die. You will be taken care of. Little Godbrand. Little vampire. Little parasite. Little boot weevil who delights in making noise and pretending he is important and dangerous. Are you going to continue questioning me? Are you going to fight me, little Godbrand? No. Then why are you still here, making your little noises?
So the distrust in his ranks grow, and Carmilla thinks he's gone mad, so that explains her scheming. So with Divine Cauterize clearly turning to Carmilla's team, the Forge Master Hector already well on his way as well, we switch focus over to the heroes. 4 episodes in, and we finally seem to be getting somewhere with them. Bear in mind, so far in this series, we have had, about 2 things happen with the heroes in 4 episodes. But they find an old viewing mirror in the Belmont estate, like the one I assume Dracula used in that big area. But if Dracula had one, then why is there a question if there's a Belmont? Or where he's going, or if the Greshit squad was killed, or if Alucard was involved. If this is a potential concern, then shouldn't they at least try confirming this with the magic mirror? This is like an outrageously weird thing to me because they keep acting like their information is ambiguous coming through the grapevine. We've already clarified that there's only 2 humans in the employ of Dracula. So where exactly is this information coming from, and why the fuck aren't they using the magic spy mirror to learn any of this? Like, these are major upsets. Why aren't they looking? Are you telling me neither of his Forge Masters can use one? We know Carmilla has one. Why isn't her information more accurate? They have a magic viewing device that lets you literally just check shit, and they never use it to check anything. But we have confirmed Dracula is 100% lying to the man making his army. He intends extermination despite Hector having agreed to help on the basis that it was only a culling.
Even Hector looks at me as if he no longer knows me.
I have respect for Hector, but he's a gentle soul. He's still a little boy. Probably the same little boy who didn't understand why he was beaten for keeping pets. He really only understands pets. That's how he perceives your war. To cull humans back to a small population and then keep them in pens. He understands that.
That is partly my fault. He's a child in a man's body. That does make him easy to lie to. You, Isaac, are the only one I've told the truth to. Because I believe you are the only one who grasps the necessity of it all.
This works really well for Carmilla, who's trying to get him to help her. The council even went to a nearby town because they didn't like that Drac only had pigs and old blood. Retaining loyalty will be hard as he gets weaker, and his army maker is potentially going to turn on him because he based the entire relationship they had on a lie. Clearly, he made a lot of decisions in anger and expected things to go over much quicker than they're actually progressing. He doesn't appear to have a long-term plan for a lot of this. But this is multi-level storytelling. Even if it is centered around the whims of someone driven mad by age and loneliness, the story has multiple moving parts and facets working against and with each other. Bear in mind, we seem to be rapidly approaching the end of the season, and our plot doesn't appear to be progressing nearly as quick as it needs to get to a resolution. Originally watching this, I thought they were going to extend the storyline of fighting Dracula and the interplay deep into season 3 or even 4. I do wish they expanded this out more because the plot feels very compressed. Anyway, on we go. Godbrand, being a bit of a cudgel of a character, tries to turn Isaac to his side, not knowing that Isaac is both aware and in favor of Dracula's plan to end all life. But with Carmilla's influence growing and Godbrand mouthing off to the humans in the council, Isaac can't really let him get to Hector, who would likely be in favor of a cleaner war. Alright, I'll admit, Godbrand is loud and seems like a weaker vampire general as we see him use almost no powers beyond speed and strength. Meanwhile, the council's reaction to Carmilla and the casual shadow teleportation that she used while talking to Hector suggests that she's more powerful than that. That makes me think she'd be hard to kill. By the end of episode 4, Dracula has several issues rapidly approaching him and no way to achieve his goals before they become a problem. Though once you have to murder the dumbest one of your own war council because he knows too much, things have already probably become a problem. That being said, this is a magician, someone who uses magic. Yet he was able to physically overpower and kill a vampire with his bare hands. Now, I know that Godbrand wasn't expecting it, but with how durable the humans seem to be in this universe, I'm starting to wonder what exactly vampires have other than a very specific food source, a weakness to sunlight, a weakness to holy water, and apparently about the same strength as an average human. Again, taken by surprise, I'll let this one go, but this does come up later too. At the start of episode 5, Carmilla is already setting up her coup d'etat and doesn't know that Viking McMuffin Brain is dead.
How hard can it be to find Godbrand of all people? There has to be a limited number of things in this castle that he can drink, sleep under, or attempt to have sex with. He must be somewhere.
Sypha learns what most rational people already knew.
I am coming to the conclusion that my people are idiots, and we should have written everything down.
Everything?
Yes, all the things. Look at this. There's more in this room than 1,000,000 speakers could carry across 2 generations. This is insane.
And Hector was convinced by Carmilla to do as she asks. Isaac reports to Drac that Hector wants to attack a strategic target, and Carmilla's forces were told to gather there through her mirror. Isaac and Drac talk about how Isaac doesn't really seek human connection. Hector was deceiving Isaac while working for Carmilla, and Isaac couldn't see it, suspecting so little that he even reported that Hector was still loyal to Dracula. Now, if he knew Hector more personally or was better at understanding other people, he would have known that this was way out of character for Hector. Isaac's dislocation from humanity gave him a narrow perspective that made him unable to realize the moral contradictions in Hector's placid reaction to genocide. Dracula himself didn't even seem to notice that slip up when he was hearing the recounting of their conversation. Now hearing it in the third person, he seemed to miss that contradiction. And this is further characterized with Dracula just seeming to not care about the war he started. He was full of flame and hatred in the beginning, and the fact that the war is taking so long has given his anger time to cool and left him with nothing but his feelings of wanting to check out. So here he is, missing contradictions, not addressing his own war council, and not even bothering to hear about how the actual war is going because he has just stopped caring. Literally saying, so long as it gets done. Also, Sypha finds most of a spell that can lock the castle so it can't teleport. And other than a few bits of witty banter, that's actually all the heroes did this episode that was of actual consequence. Then we cliffhanger on this.
See? God hates me.
That's probably not God.
Episode 5 had lots of scheming and planning, and it was all good. So far, everyone is moving in a reasonable path for their goals, and understandable arcs in their development as characters, for those that are actually getting character development, aka Dracula, Isaac, Hector, Carmilla, and so far that's really kind of it for characters making development, other than of course Belmont coming to terms with his family by going through things. There's no real action outside of a flashback, but it never felt like things had stopped because the conversations were important development, except a bit of slowing around the Belmont library scenes, but they intercut them, so we know the search took time, we just don't know how much. And no amount of character building or banter will hide the fact that only one plot progressing development actually happened with our heroes this episode. This is where I started to get concerned because we're rapidly running out of episodes to tell a story that should have one hell of a journey in front of it. I feel like 8 episodes might have been a tad bit too stingy in runtime for the kind of story they're trying to tell here. So Dracula decides to move the castle to Brayla.
Brayla. Just to keep the peace between squabbling creatures who will starve and die before the end of the year anyway. So long as it brings silence. To Brayla then.
In which even he admits he's going to let them all starve with him, and Belmont has to fight the creatures attacking what's left of his family home that we heard in the previous one. And part of Carmilla's plan is revealed.
Bless the river, Bishop. Make the water holy.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
She has resurrected the bishop from Greshit and had him bless the river and drops a huge amount of Dracula's forces into the water. That'll definitely hurt his power. And put a bookmark in that bishop because we're going to come back to him at the end. I do, however, very much like that despite being reanimated, as a bishop he can still make holy water, but because he's a zombie, he bursts into flames in the holy water because as a zombie, he's still an unholy creature even if he can still make holy water. I do find that interaction kind of funny. Belmont continues his fight and continues to learn quickly in it, though it's a bit distracting how much the art and animation are conflicting. The animation is not lending itself well to terrain interaction. I mean, come on, look at that animation layer. I got on High Guardian Spice about that, so you don't get a free pass. Your animation is a better fit to the background, and your background wasn't a bunch of free assets stapled together in MS Paint, but this right here is shoddy layering. I know putting the railing on separate layers and working the animation plus shading around them would add weeks and lots of money to development, but this scene practically slapped me. And honestly, it's very much taking me aback because a lot of the times when they don't have them interacting with complex terrain, the fighting is remarkable to look at and very much has a flowing video game combat feel. Like someone pulling off insane combos in a JRPG or some Bloodborne style build. It's only when they have to interact with complicated terrain that it becomes painfully two-dimensional. Then, of course, some pretty lazy group fighting happens inside of the castle, repeat animations where everyone just kind of waves their sword at one another. But during this big plan, Sypha starts using magic to activate the teleporter remotely, making this line while Carmilla's forces invade particularly funny.
Then we go downstairs, Isaac. Nobody takes my castle from me.
It's fighting me. It's like I'm pulling against an anchor and a water wheel all at once.
He moves the castle using an engine. That's what's acting against you.
Do as you're told.
Ah, so this is where the animation budget went. Very pretty, and also kind of epic. Oh hey, Carmilla, that castle you were trying to take? Yeah, got up and walked away.
What the fuck just happened?
And whatever she did didn't sit well with the engine. Being forcibly moved seemed to have scratched the paint a little bit. That'll probably buff out. Also, hindsight is 2020.
Where did you land the castle, Sypha?
Right on top of us. Oh, yes, I landed it on the surface, right above this underground space that's probably only held up by wood and dirt. Let's go.
Overall, the sides clashing seem to interplay quite nicely. It's too bad about Carmilla's plans, though they don't have reason to think Hector has betrayed them yet. They could think he's a prisoner, unless someone had used the magic mirror to watch the bishop bless the water, but no one uses those for actual intel gathering. Oh boy, there are some finale vibes here.
Begin.
fight is honestly pretty cool to watch, if a bit stop and go. Cutting to each of their perspectives in battle makes it hard to get a timeline on the fight, and it felt like the Smoke Lady just kind of hung out until everyone else was dead. And not to mention, with no real build-up on any of these generals, or more to their powers, they really just made them seem special with their outfits. Meanwhile, their deaths and fights meant nothing and might as well have been nameless, faceless soldiers. Not of course counting Smoke Lady, who can be smoke. She took a whole one extra move to stop. Hey, writers, don't draw my attention to characters like they're special if they aren't. I was looking forward to those fights, each one its own unique beast, but nah, I guess not. What even was the point of these council generals if they didn't seem to be any more powerful than the average vampire? They didn't suggest any extra things onto it other than Godbrand and Carmilla. In fact, they didn't even get any names and didn't seem to do anything in regards to the war effort or even have their own troop types. All they did was stand around Dracula's throne room like they were trying to blend into the fucking drapes. Are these people important in the original lore of the game? Because it kind of just seems like they stapled them onto this story to make them seem important. Oh, and for some reason Dracula saved Isaac from giving his life to protect Dracula. One last gift? You can die alone out in the desert instead of in this castle? Given how long it's been since he fed, I don't really think Dracula has a high hope of winning. We kind of get the feeling that in addition to checking out mentally, he's kind of getting pretty weak. And the Dracula fight is pretty good. If I'm honest, I won't show it all, but it was entertaining for sure. Still the issue of cutting around so they don't have to render the high detail backgrounds in 3D. There's a final emotional moment where they end up in Alucard's room and Dracula reflects on what he's doing and Alucard stakes him. Then he's decapitated. Then burned. Resilient little fuck, isn't he? And that's season 2 minus 1 episode. Let's take a quick note that the majority of the big bad's downfall is from himself. It really was his own madness and loss of investment in the world that led to everything falling apart. Had he been invested in actually teaching a lesson to mankind, Godbrand wouldn't have betrayed him, Carmilla wouldn't have gained power so easily, Hector wouldn't have misgivings that made him turncoat, and the council would have had proper direction that could have inspired loyalty. He was a man of such power that he could never be destroyed, such influence that his empire would always stand, and then he lost sight of any reason to live. So he destroyed his own empire through a chaotic war, destroyed his family through betrayal of memory, and destroyed himself through starvation. A sad tale of a man broken.
You want this to end as much as I do. Do I? You died when my mother died. You know you did. This entire catastrophe has been nothing but history's longest suicide note.
Not quite close enough.
Though this does bring up an interesting point. Our heroes won due to the betrayal of Carmilla, which they had absolutely no knowledge of. If Sypha had brought the castle there with its full complement of soldiers and generals, then our heroes would have lost due to the overwhelming numbers. A major part of their plan was to attack, but they didn't seem to care about troop numbers, the powerful generals, or even a solid idea of how powerful Dracula was because they didn't know that he had stopped feeding. They had a stupidly unfinished plan. In the end, Dracula did more to defeat Dracula than the heroes did. Also, when they were concerned that she had brought the castle right on top of them, with the whole underground cavern being supported by wood and dirt, never came up again. They wander around the castle, and it turns out it's staying right where it is.
We can't move this thing. Cypher broke it.
I did not.
You kind of did.
I do not break things.
So we agreed she broke it.
Oh, yes.
So it's staying right here. Forever.
So it's to become Alucard's home. Makes sense, I guess. Good ending. Oh, never mind. Isaac kills some wandering assholes and decides he'd like to make an army of his own monsters. Sypha and Trevor decide to continue adventuring together, and Hector and Camilla decide to go to her home to take advantage of the power vacuum. Well, she decided. He's more or less a slave now, her pet Forge Master. This episode was more or less an epilogue, here to show the where they are nows and the to be continueds. They honestly could have ended it here, but they didn't end the series here. So people in this show are ridiculously durable, to the point where the difference between them and basic vampires seems almost indistinguishable. But the heroes were likable, and the cool manipulative feel of Carmilla was very well done. The interplay of the individual goals made for an interesting story. My earlier issue does stand, though. The heroes won due in very large part to circumstances beyond their control and scope of knowledge. And in the following 2 seasons, I do hope that the main characters evolve beyond plans consisting of summon a god tier enemy to your door, literally make your battle plan in the threshold, and hope you didn't just kick in the door to a massively overwhelming army. But we'll have to see when we get there. But I'm going to be bringing up something we put a bookmark in. Specifically, what exactly was Carmilla's plan if she didn't have the bishop's corpse? I get the feeling that this whole season took place over a couple of days. And I only ask because I was just wondering about something. Where the fuck did they get his corpse? He died in Greshit, where your forces were repelled. All of the creatures you sent there died, hence why you don't know exactly how they were killed. Such a massive part of her plan and a huge contribution to the hero's victory stems from a corpse that they should not have. They even said once, it seems that our forces were repelled from Greshit, meaning they don't even have concrete knowledge of that. Again, they have the mirrors, they really should have concrete knowledge. Did we see someone leave with his corpse? I feel like that was a really important thing you probably should have shown us. We never saw them leaving with corpses before that point. They had just been killing people and kind of strewing the corpses around the town, literally decorating the walls in dead people. They didn't actually seem to be taking any of them. And of course, I should stop by on the production of it. For the animation and visual effects, well, there's kind of an up and down here. Up, they have really cool technical parts of the fights that look amazing, especially when he's whipping around the Morning Star. The Morning Star, I definitely grant as a really good weapon. The chain seems to keep changing length, but I always just kind of assumed that was part of the weapon. And while normally a whip or something that long on a chain would not be considered a particularly good weapon, when you're fighting vampires, it's actually transformed into a really good weapon, because it explodes on touch with unholy creatures, meaning you really don't have to put a lot of force behind it so long as it hits them. And when you're fighting something like a vampire, the very last thing you want to do is be too close to them, so something long range makes perfect sense. And since most normal vampires cannot touch your weapon, I would go out on a limb and say it's an incredibly effective weapon against the enemies he's trying to fight, and the resulting choreography is sexy enough to mildly arouse Monteum fans, as well as help us forget about Dr. Smack'em Sticks and the ballerina guards. But on the other end of visual effects, you have that repeating fight in the large group where they just didn't seem to care about making it look cool. The fight doesn't have to look cool unless our heroes are involved in it, evidently. Sound design was good, you had directional sound, you had effort put into your sound, and your sound effects existed where they should exist. The characters are mostly consistent. Godly Brandflakes was a savant sometimes and not on others. Belmont went with kicking in the front door instead of, say, using the super strong guy who can fly to lift you to an upper entrance, considering he knows the castle well, especially considering that he would know about how huge Dracula's forces are, and they don't yet know that most of them are dead. But beyond that, the characters feel relatable. They have layers. Having a character enjoy small things and react like a person would does amazing things for watchability. A likable character will stand out above and beyond flaws. It may not forgive them, but it does good things to distract from them. And of course, ultimately, the pacing is a cheetah on roller skates. There's so much fumbling followed by a massive sprint to the end. This is what makes me wonder if this suffers from Legend of Korra syndrome. That is, the studio gave them a limit, told them to tell a story, and trying to cram their entire remaining story arc into the episodes they were provided just proved to be too difficult, or they weren't prepared for the story they had to write. Given the vast differences in these categories, it's probably going to be a bit more subjective as to whether or not you enjoyed the story, especially considering large parts of the story seem to happen either not on screen or just skipped altogether because they ran out of episodes. So the end number is kind of up to you guys to decide. My number would probably be somewhere between 70 and 80. That is taking season 1 and 2 together, because they really honestly should have been. And I definitely enjoyed the ride. In fact, watching this made me want to play the Castlevania games despite having never had an inclination to do so before. I probably won't because I did just get Dark Souls Remastered, and that's eating up a considerable part of my life right now. But I'd say that this is one of the best video game to visual media adaptations that came out, and while it may have sounded like I just didn't like it or don't want to continue, I do want to continue because I am enjoying the series, even accepting the issues with the plot. Likeable, layered characters and the fun choreography carry this season. If they wrangle that pacing and actually show us important things happening, then they won't have to put so much pressure on them next season. So like, share, comment, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter. All those things that help you keep swords and fine hair care products. And did you all enjoy this season? Did you not? Do you think the number should be higher or lower? Or more accurately, is your number higher or lower? Because, frankly, if you prioritize characters, your number's probably much higher than mine. Or do you disagree with any of the actual issues I brought up? Or if you hate me because I'm a real VTuber now, that's right, I'm official. I have my own fandom page in the VTuber fandom, link down in the description. But if you have an issue with that, go down to the comments and be entertainingly angry.